So, the picture from Scripture that I think helps us understand grace, I think one of the best ways, is the story of Abraham. God promises Abraham, many of you know the story, God promises Abraham that he will have many children. And of course, Abraham, over a long period of time, doesn't have any kids. Eventually, his wife Sarah gives birth to a son named Isaac. God then asks Abraham to sacrifice his son on an altar to God. Now, there is kind of this modern notion, and you see this sometimes in churches, where God is being unduly harsh with Abraham. How could God even conceptualize of someone sacrificing, which means killing, their own son for God? Well, if that's your struggle, you don't know the full story. But also, let's remember that in the ancient world, Abraham would not have been surprised by a request like that. He might have been surprised that it came from God, but he wouldn't have been surprised of a request like that. Why? Because sacrifice was a normal way of life in the ancient world. Let's say you were a farmer and you needed it to rain. What would you do if the heavens didn't drop the rain? Well, you would take it upon yourself to figure out a way to make the skies rain. And what that would require would be some type of payment to a god or some kind of goddess who, I don't know, controls the weather, something like that. It wouldn't always be human sacrifice, but it would be some type of payment you would bring to the table so that the rain would fall. So Abraham, because he believed God and trusted God, he even told Isaac that God would provide a sacrifice, ties up his son, lifts his arm with a knife, ready to kill his son, arm dropping, and God says, wait, I have provided a sacrifice for you. See, the point is not that we don't need a sacrifice. That's not the point God is making. When God provides a sacrifice, he provides a ram for his son Isaac. When God provides that, God is not saying you don't need a sacrifice. He's not saying your sin isn't really that bad. What he's saying is, I will provide the sacrifice. And that's important because our natural sinful state says, no. I want to pay for it. I want to be good enough to receive salvation. I want to be good enough to receive this grace. But that goes against exactly what God is trying to teach us this morning. God does for us what we desperately need but are incapable of doing. And the reason why we're incapable of doing that is because of our own rebellion. Okay, so why does God do this? Why does God bring Abraham through this process? He's showing his uniqueness. He could have asked Abraham for a sacrifice, but he doesn't. God is the one who provides sacrifice. A false god, okay, so here's what a false god does. This is what the ancient people would do if, it didn't rain, say. A false god promises that if you do X, Y, or Z, then your expectations, whatever they may be, will be fulfilled. That's why we like false gods, because they make a promise. A false god promises that if you do this, you check off the right boxes, your expectations, whatever they are, will be fulfilled. But God's grace, on the other hand, promises that through the work of Jesus Christ, your expectations will change. Your expectations will align with God's will, and his will and promises will be fulfilled. You see the difference? That's why we like idols, because they give us a path to our own expectations, our own desires. But grace changes our expectations and desires and fulfills the promises of God's will.